Hello everyone and welcome to The Abundant Life. I'm Janet Benkovic. Our guest today writes, a tidal wave of world commissions led by a global brain trust is busily laboring to dilute and mutate the remaining vestiges of Christianity and to usher in a new planetary citizenship and a global government which will be empowered to enforce human rights. Though for many of us these words may sound like the stuff of science fiction, our guest today will show us that indeed much headway has already been made in this direction by many recognizable organizations and institutes. Join me today as guest Mary Jo Anderson discusses government and religion in the New World Order. Our guest today is Catholic journalist Mary Jo Anderson, a frequent visitor of The Abundant Life. Mary Jo is a contributing editor to Crisis Magazine and a regular reporter for WorldNet Daily and its monthly publication, Whistleblower. In addition, her articles are archived on Living His Life Abundantly's website, www.lhla.org. You know, we listened to that intro today, and I know our viewers did as well, and it's shocking to hear us speaking possibly so casually and using phrases like New World Order, planetary citizen, and it does sound like the stuff of Star Trek, but in fact these initiatives are well underway and are making great progress in the world today, aren't they?
Unfortunately they are. I think for, let's say, perhaps the last 6 or 7 years since we've had CNN and cable news, more Americans are familiar with this terminology simply because we've had icons of media, including people as well known as Walter Cronkite, talk about the New World Order, talk about, Ted Turner, of course, likes to say that he's a world citizen, a planetary citizen. And it's not unusual to hear reports of conferences and gatherings such as the World Federalist Association that met in Canada a few years ago with Bill Clinton as the keynote speaker, and of course the Gorbachev State of the World Forum. So more and more these institutions, these organizations are coming into everyday awareness for the average American who is sort of a cable news junkie.
Yes, it's true. And yet we know that even though we've had the opportunity to hear this kind of language being used, it was really not until the Cairo conference in 1994 that, in a sense, the lid was blown off of this thing, especially with the ramifications that this emerging New World Order would have with regard to Christianity and the Roman Catholic Church in particular. What was so significant about Cairo?
Well, of course, Cairo is a sort of a short term for the Conference on Population and Development, 1994, and held, of course, in Cairo, Egypt. At that conference, the Vatican, for the first time, publicly confronted sort of the world ideologues, including many U.S. citizens, Bella Abzug, who of course went on to Beijing the following year for the fourth conference on women. And it became apparent that the world ideologues were planning to push population control on the world at large. They very quickly regrouped and called it population and development rather than population control. It was a PR move. And the Vatican sort of took the veil off and said, no, this is about controlling people's fertility under duress, in force, and that it is a form of genocide. They wanted the liberals and the women and the United Nations and what we would quickly classify as the globalists saw the planet as under stress from too many human beings, a drain on resources. What the Vatican did was to make common cause, oddly enough, in our times, with Islamic nations who also do not practice contraception and birth control or abortion. So when the two got together and opposed the United Nations, the European Union, and all of those that we would consider the liberal juggernaut moving forward in the world, to say this population and control is an assault on sovereignty, it's an assault on families, and it's time for Christians to stand up and resist.
Those are strong words to come from the Vatican, and certainly we know that the words that are spoken by the Vatican are not lightly given, that they're words that are well thought out and would only be that strong if in fact the Vatican felt that there was a real attack against Christianity and the beliefs of the Judeo-Christian ethic. I think that it's very important to talk for a moment about a word that you just raised, and that word is sovereignty. In this globalist perspective, in this new world order, which really is a term that has been coined by the globalists, it's a term that they're using quite openly today. What would sovereignty look like? Would there be sovereignty, and what is sovereignty?
To take your last question first, sovereignty, of course, is the right of an individual nation and its people to self-determination. The Catholic principle of subsidiarity tells us that let's solve a problem at the lowest possible level, in the family, at the school, city, county level, so that it is more humane to the people that decisions are being made in reference to. The further out you get from the decision-making process, the more faceless the people that it affects become. So the Catholic principle of subsidiarity would say, solve it at the lowest possible level. On a global scale, that level would be within individual nations. So that would mean that the integrity of that nation, that culture, that ethnic group, that legal, moral, cultural system has a right to exist for the good of those people. And those people have the right to determine within their cultural and religious traditions how to solve the problems that arise, rather than an outside entity such as the United Nations or any international community coming in and dictating. So the Catholic idea of subsidiarity transfers very well to the political ideal of sovereignty. However, the case is made, of course, that we are a globalized world and we have free trade. International businesses need the right to transfer their associates. A good case in point. In Holland, you have a same-sex marriage. Can you transfer an oil engineer to an Islamic nation? Where, of course, that would not be permitted. So the international community is looking for a means to homogenize religious, cultural, and even political elements of a culture so that globalization can take place sort of seamlessly. This requires that nations compromise their sovereignty, and certain nations with less to lose are more willing to compromise their sovereignty because they see playing a bigger part on the world stage. That's why you have the United Nations being driven more or less recently by the European Union.
What would be some of the ramifications, Mary Jo, of this new planetary society that would be created by the globalists?
Religious freedom would be one of the first rights and privileges to be sacrificed to a global government. The Judeo-Christian worldview is the old world order. Now, the new world order absolutely means overturning that givenness of God's creation. Man is not the apogee of God's creation, but man is a cell. Earth is coming into her own, and humans are like the brain cells. The billions of years that the Earth has been in development, in the wound of the cosmos, that now she's coming into an awareness of herself, because human beings are the brain cells. But certain human beings who hold on to the old order, who don't perceive the truth and the reality that the earth is its own organism and we're each just a cell, much like a blood cell, a nerve cell, a bone cell, that because we don't perceive this, that we are cancer cells in that brain. And these cancerous cells from the old order, understanding the world in the old view, must be gotten rid of before the new order can come into being.